Holy shit, the world is racist and white people don't see it. Oh my God. This video is gonna get me in trouble. People are gonna hate it. Finally, a white man's opinion on YouTube, because that's all what you were waiting for. I know, and I gotcha. So, today, if you haven't noticed, it's just me and my lonesome. Wifey's out, so we were talking this week about maybe I should do a video. Maybe I should do something that's near and dear to me. So I thought of, in my natural, normal self, I always like to do controversial things because I like those discussions. I like controversial topics. So today, if you haven't already seen the title, we are doing why I prefer dating and being around colored women. Now hang on, YouTube. Before you torch my ass in the comment section, give me a moment. There's a very large disclaimer here, okay? Because I know, a white boy on the internet talking about colored women, a lot of room for error, but just bear with me for a second. Let me hash some things out, okay? What I mean by colored women. Now, I don't like that term personally. I think that term is problematic at best, because it sort of separates women into two groups, white women and everyone else, and it implies that colored women are inherently different than white women. That being said, I've seen the term used in some academic circles, in some feminist groups, and some intersectionality groups and stuff, so just for ease of definition, I'm going to use the term colored women today, even though I don't really prefer it, but it's going to be a mouthful to try to explain it every time. What I mean by colored women: basically, I mean specifically non-Western women darker than me. So by colored women in this video, I mean Middle Eastern women, I would say like Indian women, subcontinent, like India, Bangladesh, that kind of area, Southeast Asian women, Latino women from, say, Mexico, Honduras, and South, or obviously more specifically, like my wife, African women specifically. And again, this is just my personal experience, so please, I'm not trying to speak for all white women, I'm not trying to speak for all colored women, good God, I'm not trying to speak for anybody other than just my own personal experience with women of color and why I prefer being around them and being romantically involved with them. Obviously, I married one. So, I have 3 reasons today. Number 1, let's get started. Number 1 is probably the biggest reason I love women of color. Now, also we're gonna skip like aesthetic reasons. I really like darker skin colors. I think black is beautiful. I think dark brown is beautiful. But I mean, that's easy and that's just personal choice. Maybe you like light skin, so whatever. We're not really going to talk about that. I want to talk about kind of more detailed things. So number 1 for me is that I find colored women give me different perspectives and they challenge me and my assumptions a lot. So what do you mean by that, Carson? Well, little backstory. So obviously, Esiri and I met in England, and we were both doing our master's degree. Well, I went to England expecting to spend a lot of time with English people and a lot of time with people like me, you know, from the colonies and the dominions and that kind of stuff, right? So I get to England, and the people I end up living with are basically all colored women, all colored men. Again, I hate that term, but just for the sake of ease of the video, we're going to use it. So everyone in my school housing was West African, Central African, or there were some Middle Eastern people. So I was like not only was I the only white boy, but I was the only like white Western guy. So it was a huge culture shock for me. And honestly, I loved it. I thought it was super interesting to see how different people come together and how different really whole parts of the world can be. We're all speaking English, we're all speaking the same language, but just day-to-day stuff, like, you know, how you cook, how you clean. Obviously the food is different, but just how you do day-to-day stuff is very different. So I find that sort of challenge of like, oh, you guys do that totally different. That's something that I always assumed was just everybody did it this way and you guys do it that way. That's really interesting. So I'll give you an example of something that came up not too long ago. The movie Black Panther. So I think this is a really good example of how black women in this case really kind of challenged, or black people actually, but you know, black women, because I married one, really sort of challenged how I felt about the movie. I thought Black Panther was a pretty mediocre movie. As far as, I'm harshly criticizing Black Panther on the internet. I'm gonna get crucified. But I thought it was pretty mediocre. As far as Marvel movies go, I didn't like it really. I thought it was kind of tired and boring. Chadwick Boseman, I loved him as Black Panther in Civil War. I thought he was really interesting as a character. In here, it was almost like he didn't have anything to do. But I saw black people loved Black Panther. Everyone was like, "We are Wakanda," and everybody was really excited because there were so many Africans and black people represented in the movie. And I thought that was really interesting that a lot of people didn't even like the movie, but they still loved it for or rather I should say, a lot of people didn't think the movie was very good, but they still loved the movie for what it did. And I didn't really understand that, right? Because I'm a white guy. White guys are in every movie. White women are in every movie. There's always a white dude, right? And so it was interesting to see the different reactions from African people and, you know, African American people saying like, wow, finally a movie where like everybody's black almost. There's like 2 white people in the movie, or 1 really. All the main characters are black. And specifically, all the main characters are supposed to be African. And so, I mean, as me, an outsider, I looked at it kind of like, they're kind of, I don't know, are they really celebrating African culture here? It looks sort of like they're parodying it sometimes, you know, like all the high-tech weaponry, but they're still using like horsehide shields and laser spears. Like, you really think a high-tech African country would use shields and spears? But African people loved it because it showed African art and, you know, African dance, or African style, really. Obviously, Wakanda's not a real place. So I thought that was really interesting to see that sort of difference in how we perceive the same product. I look at it kind of like, eh. But African people looked at it like, well, it might not be the best movie, but finally we're getting some representation. And I thought that was really cool. So, I've been rambling on about that. Let's go to number 2. Also, if you don't know me, obviously, people who know me, I'm gonna ramble a lot. I always do, I can't help it. That's why I got a little notebook, but I'm still gonna talk. Carson likes to talk. Big surprise if you don't already know. Number 2, very, very important to most people, but to me, it's the weight of my heart, through my stomach. Food. White ladies, white people in general, let me be real with you here for a second. Our food sucks. It sucks balls. Our food is boring. The most exciting white people food is still boring. Black people, colored people, people from the Middle East, people from Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, your food is awesome. You use spices we don't use in the Western world. You use cooking styles we don't use in the Western world. You guys like to eat. Your portions are out of control. A jollof rice plate is like this big, and I could eat it all, and I love it. I love that people of color celebrate food in a way that it's like, it's not about like, oh, I'm gonna get the chicken salad with the ranch dressing and like the, oh, I'm just gonna have a few little french fries. Black people are like, hey, see that 1 kilogram pile of chicken? Give me half of it to myself. And oh, I'll take 7 scoops of rice on top of that. It's awesome. I love it. I love different types of food. 1, because again, it challenges what I know. Oh, what is this? This is what you eat for breakfast? But also, it's just delicious. African food is the bomb. Almost all of it. Don't tell my wife, I really hate egusi soup. Sorry, Nigerians, I just don't like melons. Egusi soup's kind of gross. But again, please don't crucify me in the comments. I'm trying my best, okay? I like, yeah, Middle Eastern food is delicious. It's all just meats and vegetables and spices and garlic. It's so good. And also, colored people aren't afraid to make their food spicy. White people get terrified of salsa that has onion in it. Black people are like, oh, we took 12 ghost peppers and cut it up and threw it in a spaghetti, and now the spaghetti is like a flamethrower in your mouth. It's awesome. I love it. I love colored people food. I love non-Western food. I think it's more interesting. Also, some of it's just straight up more healthy. We eat way too many carbs and breads and stuff, but that's a different video. Yeah, so food, you know, being married to a black woman, oh my god, I get all kinds of delicious food all the time. She's teaching me how to cook it, as we did in that other video. and I just love it. It's just all expanding my perceptions and, you know, what I know. And if I ever get bored, there's always something to learn, you know, dating somebody from a different culture. And that's one thing, again, to go back to number one, that I love. Number three, this one is a little weirder. And again, I think this is the one that people are going to be mad at me about in the comments. But again, just understand, I'm talking about my own personal experience with dating Western white women and non-Western women of color, and obviously being married to a non-Western woman of color. So please, again, this is all anecdotal. This is just my experience. So please don't think I'm talking about all white women, although it kind of sounds like I am. Obviously, I don't know what Sally from Regina does on her Saturdays, but I'm just talking about me, okay? So please, before you in the comments, just calm your boobies, calm your nipples, get your underwear out of a twist, and let's keep going, okay? Number three is women of color deal with day-to-day problems and adversity differently than white women, in my experience, do. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, this is a hard one. Women of color, especially non-Western women of color, so people from women from West Africa, women from, you know, India, the Middle East, Pakistan, all those kinds of places. Pakistan's near India, whatever. Anyways, those women, they come from like vastly different situations than we do in the West. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to say all women of color are like poor or anything like that, but in less developed countries that aren't in the developed world, so, you know, when I say the developed world, again, I'm talking about like Britain, France, Germany, you know, Western Europe and North America, basically. Most Western people have amenities that we just take for granted. Hot water is basically almost always a thing. If it's not a thing, there's a problem, right? Electricity is always a thing. When the power goes out, it's weird. We usually get it back within an hour and we complain about it the whole time. We don't know what to do when the power goes out. Internet, you know, now Canada has some issues with internet, but you know, here in Korea, they have the fastest internet in the world. It's insane, and you just take it for granted. You connect to the internet, you download things at 12 trillion gigabits a second. That's not even a real unit, but whatever. Women of color, well, I guess all people of color, but again, dating them, don't always have those same amenities. I mean, my wife comes from Nigeria. Nigeria is a place where, especially if you're in places like Lagos, I mean, while I was there, the power is, you know, they have rolling blackouts. That's a normal part of life. Sometimes you just don't have hot water. That's a normal part of life. Or running water, you know, you have to bathe with a bucket. Again, white ladies, I'm sorry, this is just my experience. Most white people really, but we're just talking about ladies here. Most white ladies I know, if you told them, oh, sorry, there's no hot water, there's no running water, here's a bucket with some soapy water in it, this is gonna be your shower for the next, you know, couple of days or a week, most white women I know would lose their goddamn minds. And again, most white people I know would too, but women of color don't really do that because, again, it's not normal, it's not an everyday thing, but it's something that happens a lot more frequently in these countries. And it's really, it's sort of, what do I want to say? It's an interesting way to see what stresses women of color out compared to what stresses white Western women out. Women of color go, oh, the power's out. Oh, well, I mean, whatever, it's just like Lagos, or it's just like Kinshasa, or whatever, or oh, it's just like home. So just, you know, let's hang out. The power will come back when it comes back. Oh, the air conditioning doesn't work. Oh, that sucks. It's going to be hot in here, but whatever. What are you going to do, right? Oh, there's no running water. Well, here's the mop and bucket, or a mop. Yeah. Here's a cloth and bucket. That's how we're going to shower, right? They kind of just roll with it, and it taught me. I mean, growing up, you know, my parents had a little cabin. We would go there for, you know, days at a time. I got pretty used to like not having electricity and stuff like that. And again, there's tons of white people that are like me, that can kind of roll with it in that way. But there's so many white people that just don't even know what that's like, right? You know, I know white people that, again, if the shower stopped working, they would lose their minds. If they came to Korea and they had to use a squat toilet, they would be like, oh my God, they would be traumatized, right? And it's just like, women of color don't really do that. Women of color have this sort of like gotta roll with it. Oh, well, you know, this is just like home. Sometimes that happens at home. So let's just deal with it. How are we gonna deal with it, right? And on that note, there's another thing I want to talk about. Okay, we're back. Had some camera problems. I just remembered one thing. Oh my God, like the most important thing that I think is important for like the entire human race about dating women of color, or especially if you're a white person, like dating people outside of your culture from a vastly different culture. Holy shit, the world is racist and white people don't see it. Oh my God, there's so much racism in this world, and it's, you know what, the biggest problem white people have with racism is we assume that racism is always going to be this like violent KKK, like let's hang people and drive them out of our towns racism. It's not. Most of it is really benign and innocent, but it's still really malevolent. It makes you feel like shit. So my perspectives on racism have been vastly expanded. The way Koreans are very friendly people. Most of Koreans, when they look at my wife and I, look at us both just kind of as foreigners, right? I think we get treated fairly similar. That being said, the difference with how people look at like, whoa, a foreign white guy and whoa, a foreign black woman are really different. And again, Koreans, it's mostly innocent. They're just really curious. There's not a lot of black people here, you know, so probably not a lot of black Africans either, unless you're from South Africa and teaching. So most Koreans probably don't see a black person like once a year, let alone like every week, right? And again, most of them are pretty friendly, but just in Korea alone, people look at my wife like she's a circus sideshow. They look at her like, oh my God, and they can't help but stare. And even when you make eye contact with them like, dude, avert your eyes, you creep, they still just, they can't look away, right? Again, pretty benign. They're not looking like, ugh, they're just looking. But as a white guy, I don't really get looks like that. I do a little bit. People look at me like, whoa, a foreigner. Oh, okay. And then they just go along with their day, right? Back home, obviously, I don't get looked at that like that at all in Canada. Nobody looks at me and goes, oh, a white guy, ugh. When I had my wife there, she was my girlfriend at the time, we got stares everywhere. And we got dirty looks too. We got looks like people were like, oh my God, they're holding hands. And it was so eye-opening to see the difference, you know, in how people perceive, you know, we walk into a store and immediately people just, hi, how can I help you today, sir? Nobody talks to my wife. Nobody will approach my wife unless, and I'm not talking about Korea, I'm talking about back home. You know, just things like that. And then there's obviously the more egregious examples of racism, like in Korea, for example. My wife's not legally allowed to teach here. English is her first language. She studied her master's degree in English. It is her first language. She has taught in English. She can't legally teach here because she's not from an English-speaking country, which is bullshit, and what Korea means by that is you're not white. That's what they mean. The only reason black South Africans are allowed to be here is because Korea is not allowed legally to discriminate against them. I guarantee it. And anybody who wants to challenge me on that, I would love to hear what you think. But in my opinion, when Korea lists South Africa as one of the English-speaking countries, really what they're hoping for is white South Africans. They don't want black people here for any reason. Obviously, other countries are different. Obviously, North America has issues with race. Canada's not innocent on this. But my point is that being with a woman of color, any color that isn't white, you will see the difference. You will see how people perceive your loved ones. And also, I would say it's made me more conscious of, you know, some of the stuff that's really nasty that comes out of like the alt-right and these groups, these neo-Nazi groups and stuff. And people always say like, oh, they have a right to freedom of speech. And you know what? Fuck your freedom of speech. When you're saying stuff about killing people and you want ethnic cleansing and you want black people to be sterilized so they can't have children and all that kind of shit, you're directly talking about somebody that's very important to me. I don't give a shit about your free speech. I don't care. That's hate, and it's inciting hate. And there's a lot of white people, well-meaning white people, that promote that free speech because they don't have somebody that's directly affected by it, right? It's really easy to sit in your little white world with all white friends and all that kind of stuff and be detached from that. And I understand why you're detached from it. I was too. I'm not trying to pretend I'm some like permanently woke person who's always been like this. But dating somebody from a different culture that has to experience these sort of things that's sort of on the outside of whiteness per se is sort of unreal. Another perfect example is like if Esiri and I have a child, what color is the child? Is the child black or white? Nobody's gonna call my kid white. Even though he's 50% white and 50% black, even if he had skin color like me, he's mixed race or he's black. No one's gonna say, oh, look at that little white boy. Nobody's gonna say that. Again, if you disagree, let me know in the comments section, but I think I'm right on that one, because just look at how we treat, you know, in North America, look how we treat people of color. You know, they can be 60% white and 40% black, and they're immediately mixed race, or they're black. It's like whiteness is this exclusive, pure little castle that everybody's trying to get into, and you're not allowed in. Anyways, whoo, that one's gonna get a ton of dislikes, but that's okay. The people who dislike it are probably assholes anyways, so there you go. I think that's all I gotta say. Maybe I'll expand on this, depending on what the comments are like on this. People will either love it or hate it. Maybe I'll expand, because again, this is just sort of an unprepared rant video. I just wanted to talk about some stuff. I apologize if there's anything I said that offends people or anything like that. Like I said, for number one, I like having different perspectives. So if there's something I said that you really take issue with, let me know in the comments. Feel free to tear me a new asshole, because I bet you I'm gonna learn from it, and then maybe we can talk about it and have another dialogue. Anyways, hopefully wifey's okay with the video, or not. Oh man, I didn't even think of that. Nah, she'll be fine. She'll be fine. She'll just kick me in the balls if there's any problems. So that's it for today. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because you know that's what we gotta do on YouTube. Let's try the catchphrase out. Remember, I said I was gonna do this in the Busan video. Here we go. That's a wrap. We'll work on that. We'll work on that. Bye guys. See you later.